Hey everybody, welcome to the Jumpstart Young Leaders podcast. It's a podcast, a conversation designed to help spark conversation that creates lasting momentum. And today, I'm here with my friend James McGarvey. And James is the security director at Fellowship Baptist Church in Columbus, Ohio. Yep. And you do all kinds of other crazy stuff too. Tell us a little bit about your background. Give us the Cliff Notes 15-second version.
15-second version, absolutely.
Time's
well,
up.
yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
No, my background is generally in safety and logistics. I was an EMT firefighter for 10 years.
Okay.
Worked as a volunteer officer for the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office for a couple years.
Wow.
But logistic-wise, I work for the government, and I can't tell you what I do for them. Otherwise,
you would have to kill me.
I would.
So we connected a few years ago, and you were kind of running a security operation for a Christian conference that I was at. And then as we began to talk, I found out that you have kind of created or developed some security systems for your home church.
Sure.
And you run a security operation there every single time that the doors are open.
Sure.
So a lot of people listening to our podcast are pastoral or lay leaders in the church. And I think with a lot of the things happening on the news these days, especially things that are happening in churches, I know that we have a general sense of why we might need security, but you're going to know some things that I might not see. So for those that are listening, why would it be a good idea to have some sort of a security policy or some people in place?
Sure. Well, there's honestly, there's a couple of reasons. The first main reason is because in 2017, so far this year, we've had at least 107 confirmed deaths on faith-based campus properties.
Wow.
And that includes, it's not a denominational figure, but that includes churches, camps, etc. And so what we're seeing is really a dynamic shift in our culture. And we know, honestly, we've got the book, we've read the end of the story, we know that it's not going to get better.
Right.
So, generally when we look at it, we look at, not only security and protecting the flock and keeping the flock safe as a responsibility in our culture, but also there's certainly references in the Old Testament and New Testament where different ministries offered protection for the folks that were serving. So in a sense, when we talk about security and safety, we encompass the idea of not only protecting the flock from the outside, but still managing a balance to allow folks to come in, minister in the community, and also protect us from ourselves.
Right.
Because as we open the doors, as folks come in and seek to worship, seek to be ministered to, folks that are going through abuse or divorce or something like that, they bring that with them. They bring that baggage with them. So a lot of times we also see that there's a necessity because, those folks will come in and maybe mom and dad are divorced and there's a dispute or something going on. And so sometimes we've had to step in and say, you know what, we need to help the pastors, we need to help the leadership kind of mitigate a peaceful, calm, situation and solution to another ministry serving them in that thing. So it's not just about the community, it's being open to the community, but keeping all the members safe inside with policies and processes that we do too.
Absolutely.
So
I know you hit on one is, parents that are divorced that may be fighting over custody, but what are a few other things that you look for?
Sure.
They're everyday things, but they're security threats that we face in the church world.
Sure. Well, a lot of times if we have guest speakers, if a pastor or a preacher is talking about a controversial subject, and by controversial, I mean something the world would look at and say, you know what, I don't agree with that blatantly.
Right.
And again, tying into, sin in our culture, honestly, it doesn't take long to realize that, if an individual was to preach against abortion or something of that nature, that somebody would be offended or be aggressive. And we don't, as our culture, we don't discuss things anymore. I have to step in and do something violent to get my point across. So, ideally, when we look at that, that's the type of thing, that's part of it. Part of it is also, we have greeters by the door that watch folks that come in. Very simple, very economical things. We have folks in the hallway monitoring during services. We have folks out in the parking lot. 90% of active shooter situations start with an individual shooting out in the parking lot. So having someone just even patrol around the parking lot to be eyes and ears is a very economical way. And they don't have to be, we're not talking about Barney Fife with a pistol or a firearm. I know there's always a lot of debate in churches whether firearms are appropriate or not. And that's certainly something, each church, by law, each church has to decide, for themselves based on, their convictions and whatnot. But, as far as being aware, it really comes from a culture of seeing who's available in the church, who has a passion. We're seeing a lot of law enforcement, nurses, doctors, veterans. My team at Fellowship is comprised of close to 25 people. Probably a third of them are veterans. And so it's really turned into a ministry and discipleship type situation where, we're not just guarding, we're not just responding to, medical emergencies, but we're holding each other accountable. We're putting time and effort in others to disciple and to lead and to grow individually. So
I know from the pastoral perspective, it is a whole lot nicer and easier for me to know that there are a few trained people who know how to step in even to a medical situation, even if it's something small, rather than continually wondering if all the kids leaders are trained and if all of the youth workers know every single policy. It makes a big difference to know that you've got a few people who are the elite rather than trying to explain everything to everyone.
Sure. And honestly, I mean, we do that as a church. We're very faithful, usually once or twice a year, with trying to train all of our folks to be first responders, all our Sunday school folks and ministry folks. But again, we've found in a lot of situations it's real easy for us. And some of that is really, and I know a lot of times churches will ask me and they'll say, well, how do you trust somebody to step in and take over? Well, the trust is earned and built over time. But the nice thing is we've had situations where, we've stepped in and said, okay, you know what, the pastor in this particular situation, he needs to leave, he needs to go do something else. We'll step in, we'll help him out, we'll take care of this concern. And, I kind of think about it and relate the passage in the Old Testament with Moses, where, his father-in-law came to him and said, look, you're taking too much on yourself, set up a leadership team, and that's what we do. I mean, we're very professional, we stay professional, we have policies to back up what we do, and every church really should. Every church should know their state laws regarding that, for sure. But, on the flip side of that too, we handle it like, hey, this is a ministry, but it's also, a professional, well-oiled machine. And, we have leadership structures and supervisors and, folks that respond, that are trained differently. But, we also go back to, we struggle, certainly like every other ministry does, with, volunteers and maintaining, folks' interest and passion and making sure they're committed. Because it's, this past weekend I spent 16 hours in a class with a bunch of other law enforcement officers on physically handling active shooters in the church. And it was a great class, great experience, but at the same time, it's an investment. And I think I think it's far more of an investment than most ministries, but if it's set up well and done well, it can be very, very life-saving.
Absolutely. You're the exit row on the airplane team. You have to know what you're actually signing up for. But I know that I've heard pastors say this, well, that'll never happen in our area. That'll never happen in our church. But I think even in the news lately, we've seen that it can be a small little town and a small little church. You never know who's in your community and who's walking through your door.
And honestly, we've been fully functional at Fellowship for 3 years now. And I could tell you stories of folks that help us, situations where I said, this would never happen to us. And, I believe that God put us in the right place at the right time. Yeah. We've had everything from doing full-blown CPR on someone, an usher that collapsed, to a known domestic terrorist come in.
Wow.
And, again, we can't do anything without prayer. And I would definitely say that across the board as number one tool. Because every Sunday, every service that we get together, we spend time before that service praying. And we pray for God's protection. We pray that God would use us. And we have, above everything else, we have seen tangible examples of God answering that prayer and saying, you know what, I'm going to bless this because, you put me first in this.
I actually saw that on the wall in your security room.
Sure.
And now you have a larger room for security, but it all kind of started in a mop closet. And I know some churches may not have an extra room, but they've got some space.
Sure.
As I walk through the room, and for those watching the video, we're going to throw the pictures up as we kind of touch on this real quick, because this will vary context to context. But you've got some items in that room, video screens, walkie-talkies, first aid kit. Run me through that real quick. Just give me the bare bones basics of, if I'm a pastor of a small or medium-sized church, what should I get for my security team of 3 to 5 people?
Well, honestly, the bare bones basics, a good first aid kit, without a doubt, and I would say a form of communication. So we use walkie-talkies. They're UHF program walkie-talkies, a business band, very economical. I think on eBay or Amazon, they probably cost $10 a piece.
Yeah.
Most of our folks, the church purchased some. Most of our folks chose to purchase their own. Very simple to navigate, but communication, first aid kit, and folks that are have a willingness to serve and awareness. Awareness is really a big thing, and that doesn't cost us anything.
Right.
Having someone talk to the classrooms. We put walkie-talkies in the classrooms so we can tell them to lock down if we need to, or if there's a medical emergency, they can call us. But you don't have to have, it's nice as the church grows to have the resources and the tools. One of the things we recently upgraded to was an AED. And so on our church campus, because of the size, we actually have 2 AEDs. That's something that can be purchased through Amazon and done quite effectively. So do you have to spend a lot of money? No, you don't. For smaller churches, again, you can get a really nice first aid kit at Sam's Club for $20.
Yeah.
And so having the folks that have that passion and drive and then a few simple things. We've over the last 10 years we've put in security cameras throughout the building,
which are fairly cheap, fairly inexpensive.
Absolutely.
To get a whole network of cameras.
Yep. Technology-wise, $600 or $700. You can get, and it doesn't have to be state of the art. A lot of people are like, it's got to be HD, it's got to be this or that.
Yeah.
Having a designated area where you can watch the cameras, a desk, maybe see who's coming in, who's coming out, leaving the building. But our way of processing the flow of our buildings and of churches has changed. And it's changed in theory. And it used to be that we would catch, just like banks, we catch people when they're leaving.
Right.
And now we're realizing, wait a second, because we've had so many church-related incidents, we have to catch people before it happens.
Yes.
And so if I'm walking through the halls checking in with folks, and I get a call saying, hey, there's a guy walking through the parking lot with a scary mask on, jumping out and scaring people, which we had 2 weeks ago.
And
they'll say,
youth pastor. So.
they'll say, hey, can you go check this out? Well, it takes time.
It's a good time to use the taser.
Yeah, pretty good. Or pepper spray, right?
Yeah.
We could do that.
I know what some pastors are thinking. You might even be listening to this and you're going, hey, that sounds great, but I don't want to create this culture of fear. And because that was honestly my first reaction the first time that someone talked to me about having church security. But from this side of the pulpit to this side of the pulpit, I want you to know that having even just a few people that you can trust does not create a culture of fear by having these policies. In fact, it eliminates that. When everyone can come and worship and know that there are a few people on the clock this Sunday who are protecting them, it removes, even with new visitors that are coming in, it just removes that barrier of being able to worship freely without constantly looking around. That's the world that we live in today.
Absolutely.
And it's great to have a few people that are
we actually had a visitor a month ago bring their family to fellowship, and one of the first things he said was when he came in, he noticed the cameras. He was looking at the check-in process that we have for kids, and for him, he said, I can go to the sanctuary, I can worship and not have to worry about that, and I'm 100% comfortable. And again, for any church, part of your success with this ministry really comes back to the folks that you have serving in that leadership dimension. And I feel like I have a special relationship with the pastors here, but that relationship is built on trust, where in the past I've said, hey, this is a concern, and they value that. The folks that you select are important.
Yes.
You
don't want Barney Fife or Mall Cop rolling down your hall.
People laugh at me, but we put folks like that want to come in. I'm open to talk to anyone, but folks that come in and say, hey, I want to be part of the safety team or security team, I'll sit down and I'll interview them. I'll say, hey, what are you contributing? What do you want to get from this? What's your intent?
A badge.
And usually when people say that, it's either usually a badge or can I carry a gun? And at that point, hey, thanks for your time. I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you later.
Well, don't call us. We'll call you.
And that's it, because you don't want somebody that's hot-headed, even-tempered, mild-mannered, and people forget. Again, 80% of what we respond to for an incident in our church here is a medical thing. So when somebody comes up and says, hey, do I get to carry a gun? To me, that's a red light saying, well, you know what? We have folks that help out that are willing to help.
The wrong thing.
Yeah. Most of our team doesn't even do that. They don't even carry a firearm. And that's fine. That's not a requirement. We do have very set policies on if you do want to carry a firearm, you need to be proficient with it, and you need to take classes, and you need to be, responsible and trained. And, so there's processes there too. But in all fairness, we are part of the First Impressions team.
Yes.
So, we are just as responsible for guest servicing and making new visitors and members feel comfortable. And I can tell you, any church, regardless, and I've worked with churches all over the U.S. in helping them set up policies, but every church starting off has hesitations based on what you said.
Yeah.
And the reality of it is, working through there, we had the same thing here, but over time, over the 2 or 3 years, we've realized, hey, things are changing, and God has placed us in situations that we've been able to witness to people, we've been able to minister to people, we've been able to protect folks from, who knows what, and that has also lended to the credibility of saying, we're not just folks that, our adrenaline junkies,
Right.
that we get, I get called that a lot for, well, how do we prevent that?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? It takes a special kind of person to be there and to be willing to, do everything that we do.
Absolutely.
So
I know we chatted a little bit before about it's not about the things that everybody knows that you did. It's really more about the things that they'll never know
Sure.
that you did. So if you're listening and you're like, hey, I want to know what I can do right now, like in my 20-member church or my 2,000-member church, what do I need to start with right now? We could probably spend an hour talking about that.
sure.
But James, you actually have a closed Facebook group just for
Yes.
church security.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
we are putting the link to that group right here in the show notes. If you're listening to the audio, and right here below the video, if you're watching here on our Jumpstart Network page. And James would love to connect with you.
Sure.
He pretty much wrote the book, except for he hasn't really written a book. Have you? Did you write a book about this?
If you take our church policy manual,
Hey,
that's
if
kind
someone
of-
wanted to get a copy
that's
of
kind
that,
of
could
that.
they get that from
Sure.
you?
Absolutely.
So join this church security group and let those who are doing it and those who have already tried it help walk you through where you need to begin, what policies you need to have, and how you can grow this ministry. This will really help your church grow as well.
One of the actually, and just to add to that, absolutely, if anyone wants or is interested in contacting me, if you're in the Columbus area, please stop by.
Yeah.
We
Check out the Hive.
regularly we will, we have a group of individuals that will go to churches and we'll talk to churches about this. We also, if you're in the neighborhood driving through, we give tours. We let folks hang out with us on a service to see, how we do things, and so if you're in the neighborhood, please stop by.
Yeah, and if anybody doesn't like me, let them try and come this Sunday while I'm preaching, see what happens. You gonna be on the clock that Sunday?
I haven't decided yet.
Change my mind, I'm not gonna be here. Well, James, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and thank you for checking out the Jumpstart Young Leaders podcast. Somebody needs to hear this, so we really appreciate it when you give us a 5-star review, when you share this with your friends, and when you, most of all, subscribe. So thanks for checking us out, and we'll see you next week.